There's a ton of films throughout all of history that you should absolutely study. There's so many, uncountable films, but I want to focus on some modern films that I think are absolutely worth studying. So in this video, I'm going to define the modern films I choose as films that have come out in the 21st century. So from the year 2000 and onward. Disclaimer, I have not watched every film in the 21st century. In fact, there's a lot of films that I really should have seen and I haven't seen them. But out of the films that I've seen, I want to talk about some of the ones that have stood out to me that I think are really worth studying for their techniques or their storytelling, certain things that you can definitely learn from as a filmmaker. First film on the list that I would highly recommend to watch and to study is Memento.
Okay, so what am I doing? Oh, I'm chasing this guy. No, he's chasing me.
Christopher Nolan has always been kind of obsessed with playing with time and structure in his films, using non-linear storytelling. I think a lot of people who are getting into writing, new writers, can be often intimidated by structure. People will be like, no, I don't want to think about structure. It's going to limit my creativity, putting my story in rigid boxes. But no, structure can be a really useful tool to tell your story in the best way possible and to add a lot of creativity, actually. And that is especially apparent with Memento. It's about a man who has short-term memory loss and he wants to get revenge on the person who killed his wife. And also, the story is told backward. So the film starts at the end and ends at the beginning, kind of. Lessons from the Screenplay has an excellent video essay breaking down the structure and why Nolan decided to tell the story in this way. I think one of the big lessons you can take away from this film is that the way in which you tell your story is as important as the story itself. This film took what is a simple revenge story and turning it into a really interesting, incredible, unforgettable experience that puts you directly in the mind of this character. So I think Memento is an excellent film to study, to learn how structure can be used in a really creative way, and also how the way in which you tell a story can affect the way the audience perceives that story so much and why it's so important. Next film, In the Mood for Love.
你先生識日文㗎？
識少少啦，佢老細日本人嚟嘅。
未請教你貴姓添？
我先生姓陳，
我姓周㗎，我翻過去先啦。
唔該你周生。
唔該。
This film was directed by Wong Kar-wai, which, man, what a director. He's made some really interesting films, and I think In the Mood for Love is his best film. In the Mood for Love is about a man named Mr. Chow and a woman named Mrs. Chan who realize that their spouses are cheating on them with each other. What strikes me so much about this film specifically is the imagery in this film. The cinematography and the way that these images are composed all serve to tell a story. It's what one would call visual poetry. And I mean, like, almost every single shot in this film seems like it's trying to say something with the way it frames the characters. It's already been talked about a lot how this film uses frames within frames to give the audience a sense that they're peering into a story from the outside, and how this reflects the conditions in which our two main characters are living in. A world where they're constantly being watched by their neighbors, by the people around them. And man, this film just oozes with style, with its imagery and cinematography, but also with its music, with its storytelling, the way it shows the progression of time, the way it reveals certain details. But the style of In the Mood for Love isn't just style for style's sake. The style of the film serves to tell the story and to create an atmosphere, to create a world in which you live in while you're watching the film. When I watched In the Mood for Love for the first time, it struck me as a film that was elegant and that had intention behind almost all of its decisions. I remember being so struck by this scene and how the communication in that scene is played out and how the camera and editing work in that scene to tell the story. It's a classic film. It's an amazing film. There's so much you can learn from it. Highly recommend it. Next film, Silence. So Martin Scorsese is one of the most well-known and well-respected filmmakers on earth, and he's very well known for his gangster films, his films about crime, about the underworld, oftentimes having a very flashy kind of filmmaking with its very flashy editing and the camera moves and all this crazy stuff going on and the bombastic acting. However, Silence is one of his much more quieter films. I mean, the film is literally called Silence. Silence is about two Jesuit priests who go to Japan in the 1600s in a time where Christianity is banned in Japan. It's very dangerous to be a Christian there, and they go there because they've heard news that their teacher, Father Ferreira, has denied the faith, which is a very bad thing in their time, and they go there to investigate while also helping small Christian communities in Japan. Silence, I would say, is a heavy film to watch. It's a long film. It gets close to 3 hours long, and it can also be quite brutal and heavy to witness these people getting brutally murdered because of their faith. One of the things that you should absolutely study about the film is the way that this film creates atmosphere. The way the camera is set up, the way it moves in certain shots, or the way it just stands still in other shots, the sound design. Throughout the entire film, there is no music, no score at all. Why is that? Why did Scorsese choose to have no music in the film? It's something to think about. But there's so many choices and small things in this film that really add to the atmosphere. I felt like I was there with them while I was watching it. It's an incredibly immersive film, a gorgeously shot film. But another thing I really want you to pay attention to is the theme that this film tries to explore. Religion is notoriously an incredibly controversial topic, a topic that very easily triggers people. But Silence is a film that I feel tackles this topic of religion in a super nuanced way. The film doesn't necessarily feel like it's trying to judge any side. It's a super in-depth exploration of how one defines their faith and how religion implemented in certain communities can have such profound effects, sometimes negative effects. It's a film that I feel really forces you to think about the themes it's exploring, for you yourself to explore those themes on your own. The film isn't trying to shout at you saying religion is bad, you should abandon your faith, or God is real and you must follow him and that's the truth, and if you don't believe in God then you're wrong. No, this film is so much more nuanced than that, and I think that's something that you can absolutely learn from Silence. How to take such a complex and controversial topic and explore it in a nuanced way that is respectful. Silence is an incredibly personal film for me, and I think it's one of Scorsese's best films to date, and I cannot recommend it more. Seriously, do watch this film. Next film, Parasite.
아 잠깐. 제시카 외동딸 일리노이 시카고 과선배는 김치모 그는 네 사촌.
I think this was kind of an obvious film. You guys probably saw this one coming. Parasite has become a modern classic. There's no denying it because everything about it is just so damn perfect. It is really one of those films that's like near impossible to find a flaw in it. Everything in this film feels so intentional. Every shot feels like it's composed that way on purpose. And the way that the story develops, the twists and turns that the film goes through, you don't know what to expect. You don't know what's gonna happen next. Parasite is an incredibly fun film to watch as well. You could watch it with your friends and you'd have a good time. But there's so much to this film beneath the surface. There are so many video essays on YouTube analyzing the filmmaking of Parasite, how each shot is composed to convey a theme, the way that lines are used in the film to represent separation, the way that elevation is used to represent class, this shot representing inner reflection. When I watched Parasite for the first time, I remember thinking to myself, damn, this film is masterfully done. Just by observing these scenes and taking it in, it's like, wow, I'm really impressed by the filmmaking of this. Just the editing, the shots, the style, like, it really impressed me. If you haven't watched Parasite for some reason, what are you doing? Go watch that film. You really need to watch it. It is a must watch. Obviously, the cinematography and the images are something you should study, but I think another really excellent thing that you should study is the structure of Parasite. This film has a marvelous twist. It's so good. Constantly kept me on the edge of my seat while I was watching it. And it's really worth analyzing, how was that set up? how did the film transition into something else and not feel super out of place or too jarring? You should also absolutely study the symbols in Parasite. Lessons from the Screenplay has an excellent video on how Parasite uses symbols to convey theme. Parasite is just one of the best films. It really is. Absolutely watch that film. And if you have watched it, rewatch it. And then again, you can always learn something from it. This next film is another one that has gained a lot of cult following and I think has already kind of become a modern classic. And that film is Whiplash.
Why do you suppose I just hurled a chair at your head, Neiman?
Whiplash is on so many people's lists for favorite films of all time, including myself. It's another one of those films where the filmmaking really impresses, specifically the editing of the film. The way that this film uses editing to create intensity is so well done. There's a certain rhythm to the editing. It feels rhythmic, it feels musical, as well as the performances, which are just so good, really great at bringing that tension to the film. Whiplash might be one of the most intense movies ever made. Especially for people who have stage fright, this film will be a little bit traumatizing, but it's worth getting through because it's masterfully done. One thing to really study about Whiplash is its theme. What drew me into the film so much is that I related so much to the themes of striving for greatness, but having to sacrifice for it, and how much sacrifice is too much. It's something that I still grapple with today. And I think that the way that this film explores those themes is done in a super interesting and really entertaining way. Andrew being the most hardworking, self-sacrificing person to achieve his dreams. He will stop at absolutely nothing. And Fletcher being the ultimate obstacle, pushing him down, being just an overall dick, but with really good insults.
Parker, that is not your boyfriend's dick. Do not come early.
But the way that these characters play off of each other and the way that that helps to explore the themes of the film is really something worth looking into. Again, Lessons from the Screenplay has a really excellent video studying Whiplash and Black Swan, which is another excellent film worth studying, and how those films explore those themes of sacrificing yourself for your dreams. Honestly, I think there's a lot of videos that do a much better job at talking about Whiplash and breaking it down than I can. So watch those, and definitely watch Whiplash and watch it again. It's another one of those films that's just one of the best. Next film, Roma. It's an interesting film because its story or plot isn't super clear. Really, you're just kind of seeing moments in time happen through the lens of this nanny. I don't think there's a really clear motivation for the character or a hero's journey or anything like that. Really, this is just the director, Alfonso Cuarón, revisiting his memories, his childhood, through film. The main thing to study about Roma is its atmosphere. It manages to capture you because of its atmosphere. It really makes you feel that you are breathing the same air that the characters are breathing. I think maybe one of the best ways I could describe this film is that it's a living, breathing memory. It's as if you're peering into memory. That's the main reason why it was shot in black and white. Not an old Hollywood nostalgic grainy kind of black and white, a very clean digital black and white. It's peering into memories that are a little bit faded. And the sound design of this film is also just absolutely stunning. It does so much to put you in that world. The way that the camera moves slowly, pans across the scenery, revealing the whole environment and the characters in it. There's something that feels so lively about it. Every once in a while, there are those kinds of films that feel less like I'm watching a film and feel more like I'm experiencing real life. And Roma is one of those films to me. It's absolutely worth studying its cinematography, its sound design, the way it creates this atmosphere and a whole world that you can live in. And at the same time, I think it's worth studying the structure of this film. It's really mundane, and yet there's something super super captivating about it? How does it do that? This film does an excellent job at taking the mundane and making it something special, making it captivating. It's absolutely worth watching and studying. Last film, Shoplifters.
よく見ると綺麗だね。顔。
Shoplifters, at the beginning at least, can trick you into thinking it's a really chill movie about a mundane family, kind of like Roma. But as you keep watching, there are certain little details that start to hint at something kind of being off about this whole thing. And it all leads up to a phenomenal finale that really changes the way that you understand what you are seeing. There's a lot of films that do this and that do this really well, but I think I chose Shoplifters to study because it's not a crazy Christopher Nolan epic where you have dreams within dreams and layers, or a crazy sci-fi epic with a huge sci-fi twist. It's a film about regular people set in the real world and how they live their lives. It lets scenes play out. It kind of lets you just walk with the characters, see them go through their lives, going to work, going to steal from the store. On the surface, it has a very simple kind of filmmaking. Nothing super crazy or flashy is going on. You're just kind of hanging out with these characters, and it's lovely. It's great getting to know these characters better and living in their world. You really get to feel the bond that they have as a family, and it's what makes the finale all the more heartbreaking. I guess one of the biggest takeaways from this film is that you don't need a crazy Christopher Nolan-esque situation and plot to tell a compelling story that is really impacting. You can look at a simple family drama and tell it in a way that hasn't really been told before. The film felt like it was always a step ahead of me, like it had me in its grasp. Hirokazu Koreeda masterfully tells this story in a way that really impacts you, in the way that you least expect it. It's a masterfully made film. I highly recommend watching it and studying it. Yeah, that was the list. I'll link a few video essays about some of these movies down in the description because they're definitely worth watching. As I mentioned in my previous video, it's super important to watch a lot of films and study a lot of films because this gets added to your film grammar, your film vocabulary, all these techniques and ideas and themes that you observe in all these films, they get ingrained into your brain and you're able to use a lot of what you observe in other films in your own films. That's why it's always great to continue watching more and more films. And there's so many movies that I didn't get to mention. There's so many movies you have to watch and that you have to study, and there's so many films I have to watch. This was fun. I really like talking about movies. Hope to see you guys whenever. I don't know, maybe subscribe if you want to see my face more, and talk to you later. Bye.
El hombre cielo fue,